Hi friends, welcome back. Today you will discover what are the 4 most critical market indicators in terms of predicting where the market is heading in 2022, and it's probably not what you think. Why is it important? Well, number 1, it's going to help you make the most informed decision for the upcoming year, right? And also, you're going to stop feeling like the market is happening to you, but rather you're in control. Important, isn't it? And if you're new to my channel, I'm Anya Bartholomew, your local Utah real estate agent. So if you're interested in buying, selling, or relocating, my information is below. And to make your time ultimately most informative, I want to remind you to make sure you mark your calendar for the upcoming year for 2022 for the first week in October. Why? Because the first week in October is the most profitable, historically proven time to buy a home. So I don't want you to ever miss this week of buying a home again. And before we get to those 4 market indicators, I'd like to share you the results of the most recent survey of the consumer sentiments, meaning buyers and sellers, and find out whether they think it's a good time to buy or it's a good time to sell. Let's go. Now, according to the most recent National Housing Survey conducted by Fannie Mae in September, 74% of sellers think it's a good time for sale, and that's a little bit higher from the previous month. So more and more sellers think it's a good time to sell, even though, it might be a little bit too late, but anyway. And 66% of buyers are now believing that it's not a good time to buy, and that number is also a little bit higher than from the previous month. Interesting, isn't it? Now, according to the same survey, the share of consumers who thought that the housing prices will go up is actually decreased. The share of consumers, about 24%, who say that the market will stay about the same, like market will remain unchanged, about 24%. And 33% of those who were surveyed indicated that the market may be going down. So, roughly speaking, like a third thinks it's going to go up, a third thinks it's not going to change, and the third thinks it's going to go down. So very, very interesting. Now, how does this compare to what the experts are predicting for 2022? Well, interestingly, Goldman Sachs released their forecast for 2022 for real estate market, and they predict about 16% appreciation. Now, Zillow, based on their very sophisticated consumer evaluation and market price model, obviously called Zestimates, they predict about 11% increase. And if you're following my channel, you probably remember that I said that the Realtor.com chief economist predicted about 4% increase for 2022 in July. However, I don't know, maybe they've changed their opinion. Now, those numbers are all over the place, and these are national numbers, and we all know that the local numbers are not necessarily following the national. We've seen it last time from my previous video. You've noticed that this could be quite a bit of change, and that's why I would like to invite you to look at those 4 market indicators that I think are much more accurate than just listening to the average, bulk size, news on the radio or on the internet. So buckle up, let's look at that. And before I share the number 1, I want to share with you what is not a number 1 for me anymore. And I kind of like confessing here that I was wrong, because in my previous video, I was heavily emphasizing and giving a lot of attention to the fact that, relatively speaking, the average sold price went down in 1 month in Washington County, St. George, from $582,000 to $535,000. And I was making a really big deal out of it. However, in this market, if we just look at the more weighted averages of the most current prices, we're going to see quite a significant increase. However, we know that should a big mansion, or 2 be sold in this upcoming month, then, the average price could jump significantly up and down. Therefore, even 20 or 30,000 might not be a significant increase or change. It's the trend that really counts. That's why I want to get our attention to those indicators that are a little bit more consistent and are not as easily biased one way or another. The number 1 indicator that I want to bring to your attention is actually days on the market. How long does it take for a house to sell? So we know that in January for Washington County, that number was actually 40+ days. That's a pretty big number compared to the last 3 months official statistics, June, July, August, were rotated between 15 and 16 days. Huge difference. However, the sad thing about statistics, and because, if we want to buy or sell a house now and the statistic official official statistics comes, 6 weeks later, that's not very, very, very helpful. Therefore, I want to share with you right now that the two weighted average, with 2 weeks apart, like for example, the month weighted average of the month, the first week in October, and then, the current week in October, I am noticing 22 days on the market for the first week in October and 24 days on the market. That's significant. So actually, if you do the math, which I did, but not a hard one, so you will notice that it's about 60% increase from 15 days to 24. That is quite an indicator, and putting in perspective might constitute the trend. So that's the number that I will be following very, very quickly for my clients, because that's going to give us the indicator about what is the purchasing power for my buyers right here, right now. Important, isn't it? My number 2 indicator is actually the difference between the asking price versus the sold price, right? So that's basically telling us like how much the buyers are willing to pay over the asking price. And so that really constitutes that friction between the sellers, supply and demand. That's an important number. So you may want to know that in January for Washington County, that ratio was 98%. So lower than asking price. But then for the last 3 months of the official statistics, we had actually 102%, another 102% for June, July, and August. In August, it was 101, and then it dropped to 100. However, if we're going to my preliminary statistics for the last, 2 weighted average for the first week of August, October, and obviously like the current week in October, you will notice that that number is at 97. So guys, this is lower than January. So if going back to my little tip, my forever buyer tip is absolutely mark your first week in October, first maybe and second week in October as the best time to buy a house. That's historically proven by all the historic records on Realtor.com. My number 3 indicator, and that's something realtors would know intuitively, and that concerns the number of showings. So according to the national statistics, the number of showings for the West, we're in Utah, we're in the West, dropped by 20%. So that is definitely an indicator of the buyer's demand. Again, so if we just stayed with the fundamentals of supply indicators and the demand indicators, that's a really good one. The Midwest dropped by 23%. And the South by 13%. And my final indicator, number 4, that's the number of units sold. So if we can see that the inventory is going up, the new listings are going up, and then the pendings are, doing whatever they're doing because, that's different actually every month. But if we just look at the number of closed sales just to see, that will also tell us that unique ratio between the demand of supply, between the friction and the tension, the relationship, the dynamics between the buyers and the sellers. And right now, based on my preliminary numbers, that number has dropped by 3 or 4%, and we are looking forward to looking at the official statistics to see what are those numbers going to be for the next official month of statistics for the National Association of Realtors and also for Utah local market. And that should be coming up next week, and I'm really, really looking forward to see whether my forecast and my predictions and my tracking of the market are consistent. And that's why, in a way, I'm just going on record, sharing my opinion, and then proving myself hopefully right. And before we wrap up, I also want to mention 2 traps, something that you do not want to consider seriously, because a lot of the times there is a big thing is made out of it in the news, but I want you to know better. For example, in the recent Zillow's blog, it was detected and it was revealed about the trends that currently every realtor, every 25% of realtors actually indicated that they receive 4 offers or more on their listing. That is such an unreliable number because there are realtors who are dramatically reducing, artificially reducing the price to attract the bidding wars and create this, frenzy that's what's been going on very much in March, in April, because most of the houses at that time were undervalued, to create, like I was witnessing a line of over 100 people to go and look at the showing. I mean, this is not a good thing for the seller, to have so many people go through the house, especially in the post-pandemic era. But, this aside, it's really important to understand what statistics not to pay attention to, and that will be one of those. And another trap, number 2, I was just looking at the Realtor.com, weekly forecast and their numbers. They just indicated that the days on the market nationally are becoming less and less and less, continue to become less and less and less. And that is so inaccurate for what you and I just discovered for our local market. And therefore, it is so important to pay attention to your local news rather than watching all those sensational, numbers and statistics, to attract attention. Now, with all of this information in mind, I want to loop back to this first slide that I was sharing with you, and that is the forecast for Goldman Sachs for 2022 of 16% appreciation nationally, also 11% for Zillow appreciation for 2022, and also 4% for Realtor.com appreciation of home prices for 2022. So I'm going to ask your honest opinion. What do you think in terms of the local? We can speculate of the national market, but really, who cares? It's not going to make us rich or poor, right? But anyway, so for local market, it is important. So I really want to ask you, what do you think the appreciation is going to be for 2022 in Washington County, St. George? And, if you want to make it more Utah specific, but St. George will be a little bit different than the overall state of Utah. So put your comments over there, and then let's see what your knowledge is going to tell us then. And therefore, I would like to invite you to share your thoughts of the market prediction, because a year from now, we can look at this video and we can look at your forecast and my forecast. Like in the next video, I'll share my forecast for 2022. But then we'll compare notes, and this is the best way to learn and understand the real estate, by making those educated guesses and then tracking the actual results. Don't you think? And as always, thank you for watching. It takes me a little bit of time to prepare for that. So if you like the content or would like some tweak on the content, would like a different angle on the content, I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, please subscribe, click the like button, and I'd like to see you on my next video.